Brian, the last part that I wanted to get in now is, of course, the European regulation. And I know we're desperate for the secrets that Brian brought us today. He had so much juicy details and he has to go in this. And I want to know, is the Cybertruck coming to Europe? And of course, we've got a pretty nice and interesting response from Elon Musk himself that, yeah, they are on it to getting this. So this was today a news that went out there. I'm going to look if I can pull it up. But before we do that, I want to show the specs again. And because there's one thing that is highly critical for the European release of the Cybertruck. And that's, maybe you can say something, because I already talked about that so much. Maybe you have already some insight there.
Sure. So there were three things that came up that I kept hearing. One was that the blinkers are not compliant because they're the wrong color. That is so easy to fix. That is ridiculous. And that to suggest that a parts supplier can't make amber turn lights is an insult to the entire history of industrialization. The next was that the headlights are at the wrong angle, or at the wrong height. European regulations on headlights are not only strict, but different than in other places. They require the beam to be at a higher angle than you would necessarily see in the US. And if the headlights are all the way up here and at a higher angle, they're going to be a road hazard. You're going to blind everyone. And what we found at the event was that top light bar is your daytime running lights. It's decorative. The real headlights are all the way down in the bumper where you and I were talking about just last week. We knew that was the case. But now we have confirmation. The headlights are at the right height to be road legal in any country. The third issue is crash safety. And I don't mean for the occupants. I mean for everyone other than the occupants. I mean for the pedestrians and for the other motorists. And that remains a question mark. And I know from conversations with Tesla employees who the legal department in Europe has already been told to work on it and get it figured out. And the legal department in Europe is not excited. They are desperately concerned about how this is going to work. I don't know if they have seen all the crash test footage that's been done here. I don't know if there is additional crash testing that they can do to convince them that this is not going to be something that that you don't want to ship 5,000 over and then find you can't deliver them and have to ship them back. But there could, it will be known. And if for some reason it is too sharp, and I keep hearing that, well, it's sharp. The edges are sharp. Physics doesn't care as much about the angle of what hits you. It's not a spear. A spear would cause harm. It's still blunt compared to the shape of human flesh. But we're seeing this vehicle does not have as much give as you might like. The rollover tests, beautiful. It's not going to roll. That is fantastic for a truck. But boy, that is rigid. That is one rigid structure.
So this is very important. There are three main topics, because it's the weight that was problematic for many Germans and Europeans. We now know that, because we know actually now the weight is around 3.1 tons. That's why I say that in tons. It's how much it is actually, here you can see the translated specs. You can screenshot that. Maybe the weight here is 6.6 pounds, of course, and that's around 2.9 tons around that. And the Cyber Beast is 6,800 pounds with 3.1 tons. That's the biggest number that we have. So
the metric tons.
Metric tons, yeah, sorry. With the conversions, I'm struggling with that a little bit. But the fact is that if you want to drive a car in Europe, you have to have a B license. The overall weight of the whole car, with all the passengers and with everything you have inside of the car, is around 3.5 tons. So this thing is below this. So that means, yes, you cannot load this thing more than with one human and then cargo of 400 kilograms metric. That's the thing. But we have trucks here as well. And guess what? If you want to drive a truck with a B license, then you cannot load it as much. But here are Ford F-150s that are also like 2.8 or 2.9 tons, for example. And that's already on the road here, and people can use it. Is it a big market? I wouldn't say so, but yeah, that's something I wanted to say here.
And also, as I understand, there's an additional weight allowance for electric vehicles in many countries.
Yeah, and this is adapted. I'm not sure if it's a 100% passed, or in some countries passed, or all over Europe already passed. So I'm not sure, but I think it is already passed because they discussed that pretty thoroughly. And now it's 4.1 tons that you can drive electric vehicle. And this means more cargo for your Cybertruck, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And now we're talking. Now we're actually talking because you don't need a truck license to drive this thing. And that's pretty important for the European market.
Very exciting.
Yeah. And one more thing was the lights. You've already mentioned that. The lights is that the light bar that we have on top isn't actually the rear lights. The rear lights are below that. And yeah, this is actually pretty awesome to hear because this also, the headlight regulation also is off the table. There's only like a few things, the crash test safety, and we've also seen that. That's the last bottleneck that we have to get my Cybertruck on my front porch here, if I could say so. I don't have a porch, but you get the point. So I wanted to also show a little bit before we go more into the details, because I want to have those great juicy leaks, of course, that Brian has, that's a Ford F-150 that we can buy in Europe, talking about pedestrian safety. Brian, can this thing eat up a human being when it's crashing?
I don't see how those rounded edges are going to save you when it's coming at you at, at road speeds.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, interesting. And what about the G-Wagon? Germans love G-Wagons. Wow, that's a Mercedes G-Wagon. Wow, this is the front, the engine bay is such a beautiful and cozy place where you could rest when you were hit by this thing. So even if you compare the G-Wagon now with the Cybertruck crash, which was pretty interesting, is that actually, look how much it crumbles, like this. I mean, it's about the edges here that we can see here that might be problematic, but they rounded off the Cybertruck everywhere, which is a good thing because there are some regulations about this.
Going back to the G-Wagon, I get it. You guys don't like triangles, but somehow a vehicle inspired by the shape of SpongeBob SquarePants is great. It doesn't make sense. I saw my first G-Wagon on the road yesterday, and it was interesting. But if this is road legal, that has less give than a Cybertruck, is just as heavy, I imagine, and is going to kill you.
Yeah, and one last thing here that I wanted to mention is look at the height of the person. I mean, I don't know how tall he is, but that's a huge hood. And if you look at the Cybertruck, when you stand in front of a Cybertruck, do you think your hip is maybe on that height, so that means you can roll over a Cybertruck much more easier, and that's much more safer than being eaten up by a Ford F-150 that has a huge engine block. Guys,
I can't tell from the picture, but is he standing up on a curb or is he on the pavement?
It's on the pavement. I think it's just a line, but it could be
just a line. But no, the trucks are very tall. Unlike the F-150, the Cybertruck, unless you're in off-road mode, is going to be lower down. It automatically lowers to reduce aerodynamic drag.
Yeah. Exactly. And one last thing here. These are all recordings from NCAP, the Euro NCAP, that are doing this crash test. And I would say that's the last hurdle they have to do with the Cybertruck to actually get it approved. And like you already leaked, you hinted at that this thing is in the works. The lawyers are on it, which is a huge, big deal, actually. That means the tweet that Elon put out is actually pretty close to the things that they are already working on. So this means maybe they're gonna release the Cybertruck earlier than we are thinking, because the size, the weight, everything fits, everything is cool. It's just pedestrian safety. That's the last bottleneck that we have to come over to see that. And the interesting thing is, I wanted to show here for 1 second is, of course, that's a very popular type of vehicle. That's a multivan. It's a hybrid multivan from VW. And if you look at the thing, guys, it's also tall. Is that pedestrian safe? I'm not sure. And the engine block is going to be pushed inside of the cabin, which is another thing that people don't really put into account that we have just in front of the Cybertruck, there's just a frunk. So nothing is pushed into the cabin. So I would say the crash test is the last big bottleneck for Europe. But now, Brian, please go on with your story, because Brian was not invited to the Cybertruck event. And now we're going to come to the leaks. He already hinted at that for the regulation of Europe, which is very important. But Brian, now you have the stance. You've heard it here first or second, depending on how it's going to go. So Brian, please tell the audience what was happening. So we're going to see the big news.
Oh, you want the whole thing? Is my buddy Paul said, I know a little place we can go that's real quiet on Fridays. It's a brewery. They've got some, great beer on tap. And we head over there. And when we get there, the parking lot is packed. There's a guy directing traffic. And I said, boy, there's an inordinate number of Teslas here. And he said, you know, it's Austin. I said, yeah, I know what Austin is. This is an inordinate number. And we get up to we start walking in, and a guy says, you're here for the private event. And we said, yep, that's us. So we went on in, and it was a Tesla employee Christmas party. So we hung out, made some new friends, chatted up some great folks, and, listened in on some interesting tales, and found out a number of interesting things. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's more or less all you can say here. I mean, you've hinted at some stuff already, but I don't want to spoil everything, because Brian has a video coming up that's gonna be more in depth. But maybe you can give some nuggets out of that.
Well, the big thing is that I was able to talk to someone there who confirmed that the lawyers in Europe are working on it, and have been for some time now, many months at least. It's not just something Elon wants and you want, it's something that has been actually put in motion. Does that mean it's definitely going to happen? No, but it means they want to. There's so many orders in North America already. The other good news is, because it's steer-by-wire, that means you can have right-hand drive. That means
exactly. UK is applauding now.
Yeah, UK, Australia is applauding. New Zealand is applauding. North Korea is required to applaud. I don't know which side of the road they drive on. It doesn't matter, because they don't have cars. But their applause is very orchestrated.
Orchestrated.
Yeah, it's very choreographed.